16 popular retailers are closing stores right now. And once you see the pattern connecting all of them, you're going to start understanding something that most people miss completely. This isn't a handful of unlucky companies making bad decisions one at a time. This is a wave, and it's moving through nearly every category of shopping you can think of. Groceries, pharmacies, clothing, home goods, electronics, even the corner store you've never once thought twice about walking into. Some of these chains are already gone completely. Some are in the middle of collapsing as we speak, with liquidation sales running right now in a mall near you. And a couple of these names are going to genuinely surprise you because they're not small, struggling chains hanging on by a thread. They're brands you would have bet real money would be around forever. The kind of stores that felt like permanent fixtures of American life rather than businesses that could actually disappear. Quick note before we get into it, everything you are about to hear is based on public reporting and company statements, but this is our take. It's entertainment, not financial advice. So if a location near you shows up on this list, go verify the specifics yourself before you do anything drastic with a gift card or a return. All right, let's start the countdown. Number 17, Joann Fabric. This one already happened and it still stings for a lot of people. Every single Joann location in the country, close to 800 stores, has shut down for good. A fabric and craft chain that survived for 80 years, through multiple recessions, through the rise of big box retail, through the entire internet reshaping how people shop, and it still couldn't survive this particular moment. The short version of what happened is that private equity loaded the company with heavy debt years before any of this became public news, the kind of debt that doesn't matter much when sales are strong, but becomes a death sentence the moment sales soften even slightly. At the same time, online craft retailers and independent sellers on marketplace apps quietly ate away at the in-person browsing experience that Joann had always depended on. When you can find the exact same fabric, the exact same yarn, the exact same craft supplies on an app for less money, with reviews attached and free shipping thrown in, the appeal of driving across town to a strip mall starts to fade fast. Joann filed for bankruptcy twice within 2 years of each other. The first time, there was still hope for a turnaround, a plan to shrink the footprint and hang on with a leaner version of the business. The second time, there simply wasn't a rescue plan left on the table, and the lights went out for good, ending nearly a century of being the default answer for anyone who sewed, quilted, or crafted anything by hand. Number 16, Party City. Another full collapse. Another chain that used to be the automatic answer whenever a birthday, a costume emergency, or a holiday party snuck up on you. Every remaining Party City location has now closed following its bankruptcy proceedings. The company pointed to a mix of declining mall traffic, rising operating costs, and a product category, party supplies and costumes, that has been aggressively and quietly taken over by online sellers who can ship a full costume, decorations included, in 2 days flat for half the price of walking into a physical store. What's interesting is the timing here. Both Joann and Party City had essentially collapsed before this year even properly got underway, which tells you something important about the mood retail was already sitting in as we walked into 2026. The cracks were showing well before most of the headlines caught up to them, and honestly, that's a pattern worth remembering for the rest of this list, because by the time a closure makes national news, the actual decline usually started years earlier behind the scenes. Number 15, Eddie Bauer. This one is still unfolding in real time, which makes it worth paying close attention to. Eddie Bauer filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection and announced that all of its roughly 175 stores across the United States and Canada will close entirely unless a buyer steps forward before the deadline. As of right now, no buyer has. The outdoor apparel brand got squeezed from both directions at once. Cheaper fast fashion outdoor gear flooding online marketplaces on one side, and premium outdoor brands with stronger, more devoted followings on the other. Eddie Bauer got caught right in the middle, too expensive to compete purely on price, not distinctive enough anymore to compete purely on brand loyalty. If you're holding a gift card right now, spend it immediately, because bankruptcy court filings have already cut off gift card redemption at several locations, and returns are getting harder to process with every week that passes. Quick pause because you need to know this. The food industry built a trap that gets your money every single time you walk into a store. Tiny pricing tricks, shrinking portions, packaging designed to fool your eyes into thinking you're getting more than you actually are. And I put everything I've learned exposing all of it into a guide called The Consumer Trap. So go check it out and grab your copy. And while you're at it, hit subscribe real quick. It genuinely helps this channel keep digging up stuff like this for you every single week, and it costs you absolutely nothing. Number 14, Claire's. 7 years after its last bankruptcy filing, Claire's is back in court again. This time the company is closing at least 18 stores immediately, and openly exploring selling off some or all of its remaining assets, which in corporate language basically translates to, "We genuinely don't know if we're going to make it through this one." Claire's is carrying up to $10 billion in debt, which is a staggering number for what is essentially a mall-based accessories and ear-piercing chain. What it really captures is something much bigger happening across the entire mall ecosystem. Ear-piercing and cheap jewelry used to be an impulse stop, something you'd duck into on your way to somewhere else in the mall. A quick 5-minute detour while your parents shopped nearby or while you waited for a movie to start. When the overall mall trip itself stops happening as often as it used to, that impulse stop disappears right along with it, and there's no clever marketing campaign, no influencer partnership, no seasonal sale that can bring back foot traffic that simply isn't walking through the building anymore. Number 13, At Home. The home decor chain has expanded its closure list from an original 26 stores to 32, with most of those locations shutting down by the end of the year. At Home built its entire identity around giant warehouse-style stores stuffed floor to ceiling with cheap decor, the kind of place where you'd wander for a full hour and somehow leave with 3 things you never once planned on buying when you walked in. A candle here, a throw pillow there, a seasonal wreath you didn't know you needed until you saw it. That specific kind of aimless wandering behavior, the same behavior that used to fuel boutique retail and craft stores across the country, has been steadily draining out of physical stores for years now, redirected instead toward algorithm-driven online shopping that shows you exactly what you might like before you even go looking for it yourself. At Home is left holding a massive footprint, massive rent bills to match that footprint, and a steadily shrinking reason for people to physically show up and fill those aisles the way they used to. Number 12, REI. This one hits differently because REI isn't struggling in the same desperate way most of the chains on this list are. It's a member-owned co-op with genuinely loyal customers and one of the strongest brand reputations in all of specialty retail. And yet REI has confirmed it's closing 3 stores this year, including its flagship location in New York City, along with stores in Boston and in Paramus, New Jersey. When even a beloved specialty retailer with devoted, paying members starts cutting flagship locations in major cities like these, that's not a company in crisis. That's a company reading the room with brutal honesty about what its real estate actually costs. Commercial rent in markets like Manhattan and downtown Boston has climbed to a point where even strong sales per square foot simply aren't enough anymore to justify keeping the doors open. And if that math doesn't work for a co-op with famously loyal members, it's worth wondering how many other specialty retailers are quietly running the same numbers right now behind closed doors. Number 11, GameStop. Reports indicate the company is closing more than 470 stores to start the year, a figure that's significantly higher than the early projections analysts had floated just months earlier. GameStop has been shrinking gradually for years now as digital downloads increasingly replaced physical game purchases. But this particular pace of closures is aggressive even by GameStop's already declining standards. The stores that survive this round are being pushed harder to sell collectibles, trading cards and pop culture merchandise instead of leaning on games as the core business. Because at this point, games are barely the business anymore in any meaningful sense. What used to be a video game retailer is slowly turning into something closer to a novelty and collectibles shop that just happens to still have the GameStop name hanging above the door, a strange afterlife for a chain that once defined an entire generation's trip to the mall on release day. Number 10, Amazon. Yes, that Amazon. The company is closing nearly all of its Amazon Go convenience stores and its Amazon Fresh grocery stores, effectively retreating almost entirely from operating its own branded physical store concepts. Some of the shuttered Fresh locations may eventually get converted into Whole Foods stores instead, but the Amazon Fresh brand as a standalone supermarket chain is going away for good. Sit with that for a second. The single biggest, most technologically advanced retailer on the entire planet spent years and untold amounts of money trying to build the future of grocery shopping. Cashierless checkout, just walkout technology, sensors tracking every item you picked up off the shelf, and ultimately concluded that running the physical buildings themselves simply wasn't worth it. If a company with Amazon's resources, Amazon's data, and Amazon's patience can't make the physical grocery math work long-term, that tells you nearly everything you need to know about how brutal this category has genuinely become for absolutely everyone operating in it, not just the smaller chains struggling to keep up. Number 9, Foot Locker. Now under the ownership of Dick's Sporting Goods following last year's acquisition, Foot Locker is closing a substantial batch of underperforming shoe stores as part of what company leadership openly and bluntly called cleaning out the garage. Even before the acquisition happened, Foot Locker had already signaled around 400 closures stretching from 2023 all the way through this year. Sneaker culture itself absolutely did not die. If anything, it's bigger and more obsessive than ever, but the mall-based sneaker store model very much did, because sneaker drops, resale markets, and direct-to-consumer brand releases now happen almost entirely online and through dedicated apps, not through a physical wall of shoe boxes at your local shopping center where you used to line up before school for a limited release. Number 8, Francesca's. If you've been following retail closures for a while now, this name might already sound familiar because it's been slowly dying for years in the background. Now it's finally, completely finished. The boutique chain is shutting down its entire remaining fleet of roughly 400 stores after bankruptcy proceedings that first started years ago have finally reached their inevitable conclusion. Francesca's sold exactly the kind of impulse-driven, discovery-based fashion, accessories, and gifts that social media and algorithm-driven online shopping have almost completely taken over and replicated at a fraction of the cost. The entire mall boutique model needed a specific kind of customer behavior, people wandering through without a plan and discovering things they weren't looking for in the first place. That behavior essentially doesn't exist at meaningful scale anymore, and no amount of internal restructuring, no matter how well-intentioned or how many consultants got brought in to fix it, was ever going to bring that kind of foot traffic back from the dead. Number 7. Saks. Luxury retail took a genuinely significant hit this year, and it's shattering an assumption a lot of people held for decades without ever really questioning it. Saks Global, the parent company behind both Saks Fifth Avenue and Neiman Marcus, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection and is closing 8 full Saks Fifth Avenue department stores, along with the vast majority of its discount Saks Off Fifth locations, roughly 57 stores in total. On top of all of that, every single remaining Neiman Marcus last call outlet store is closing as well, wiping out the discount side of the luxury business almost entirely. Luxury retail was supposed to be recession-proof by definition. Wealthy shoppers were supposed to keep spending freely no matter what was happening in the broader economy around them. That was the entire premise everyone built their forecasts on. That assumption is simply not holding up in 2026 because even affluent consumers have gotten noticeably more selective with their spending habits. And the pandemic-era luxury spending boom that carried these brands for several years on pure momentum has now completely run its course. Number 6. Carter's. The children's clothing giant confirmed it's shuttering around 150 stores over the next 3 years, with about 100 of those specific closures landing directly in 2025 and 2026. Carter's pointed explicitly at new tariffs driving up the cost of importing clothing from overseas manufacturers, stacked directly on top of a deeper structural shift where children physically outgrow clothing sizes in a matter of months rather than years, pushing more parents than ever toward buying secondhand and reselling once a size stops fitting their kid. Add a steadily declining national birth rate into that same equation, fewer newborns arriving every single year across the country, and the core customer base for any baby and children's clothing brand is quietly shrinking year over year, completely independent of anything the company itself is doing right or doing wrong on its own end. Number 5. Macy's. The department store anchor that entire American shopping malls were physically designed and built around is continuing a multi-year plan to close roughly 150 underperforming locations nationwide, following 66 closures that were already confirmed and completed the year before this one. Macy's says it's refocusing its energy and resources on its stronger performing stores along with its Bloomingdale's banner, betting that a smaller, more curated footprint can actually perform better than a sprawling one. But here's the thing. Most coverage of this misses entirely. Every single time a Macy's leaves a mall, it doesn't just remove itself from that building. It pulls away the foot traffic that every restaurant, salon, and specialty shop in that same complex depended on from shoppers simply walking past their storefronts on the way in or out on a Saturday afternoon. The classic department store model was built around unhurried, aimless browsing between departments, wandering from shoes to home goods to fragrance counters without any real plan. That specific behavior moved online years ago, and there's no indication whatsoever that it's coming back anytime soon to fill those quiet hallways again the way it once did. Number 4. Kroger. Here's where this list stops being purely about discretionary spending and starts being about food itself, the one category people genuinely cannot opt out of no matter how tight their budget gets. Kroger, one of the largest grocery chains in the entire country, is carrying out an 18-month plan to close approximately 60 underperforming supermarkets nationwide. This comes directly after federal regulators blocked Kroger's proposed merger with Albertsons, a deal that was specifically designed to give Kroger the scale it needed to compete more efficiently against Walmart, Costco, and the other warehouse clubs eating into its market share year after year. Without that merger, Kroger is left absorbing rising labor costs, rising insurance premiums, and rising logistics expenses across its existing footprint, all while shoppers increasingly split their weekly grocery runs across 2 or 3 different stores just to chase the lowest possible price on every single item on their list. A habit that used to be unusual and is now completely ordinary for millions of households trying to stretch every dollar. Number 3, Walgreens. This one's genuinely complicated, so let's take a moment and get it right. Walgreens originally announced a sweeping plan to close roughly 1,200 stores over 3 years as part of a major company-wide turnaround strategy. Then Sycamore Partners completed a massive take-private buyout of the entire company, and under that new ownership, the closure pace actually slowed down noticeably, with more recent reports now suggesting fewer than 100 Walgreens stores will close specifically in 2026. Even though the longer-term 1,200 store target still technically exists further out on the horizon. So the headline number sounds smaller this particular year than the original announcement suggested, but don't mistake that slower pace for genuine stability underneath it. Front-of-store retail sales keep declining month after month as shoppers buy the same everyday items online or at mass retailers for less. Pharmacy reimbursement rates from insurance middlemen keep getting squeezed tighter and tighter with every contract renewal, and organized retail theft keeps pushing more everyday products behind locked plexiglass cases in the stores that remain open for business, slowing down every quick errand into a scavenger hunt for an employee with a key. The long-term plan hasn't disappeared. It's simply been stretched out over a longer runway under new ownership. Number 2, 7-Eleven. The convenience store giant's parent company has announced plans to close approximately 645 stores across North America. For a brand whose entire identity has always been built on the idea of being always open and always nearby, no matter the hour, no matter the day. That's not a routine portfolio trim. That's a genuine retreat from the one core promise the entire concept was built on from the very beginning decades ago. Overnight staffing costs, rising insurance premiums, and shrinkage from theft in certain urban markets have made the 24-hour operating model simply unprofitable at a growing number of individual locations, no matter how iconic the sign in the window used to be. Cities across the country are already seeing stores that used to proudly display permanent 24-hour signs quietly switch over to reduced overnight hours instead, closing at midnight or 1 in the morning where they used to never close at all. The convenience store on your corner was never really about the coffee or the snacks stacked on the shelves. It was about certainty, about knowing it would always be there whenever you needed it at any hour, and that certainty is becoming noticeably rarer with every passing month. And now, number 1, Rite Aid. This is, without question, the single biggest and most complete collapse anywhere on this entire list. Rite Aid filed for bankruptcy for the second time in recent years, and unlike its first filing, there is simply no version of this outcome where Rite Aid survives and continues on as a standalone company. Every single remaining location across the country is closing, roughly 1,240 stores in total. Rite Aid isn't trimming its footprint, isn't restructuring towards something leaner, isn't pulling back to a smaller, more sustainable size the way almost every other name on this entire list has been doing. It's disappearing entirely, permanently, completely off the map. An entire national pharmacy chain simply ceasing to exist. Most of the surviving store locations are being sold off piece by piece to competing pharmacy chains, with CVS picking up the largest single share at around 625 locations, while Walgreens, Albertsons, Giant Eagle, and Kroger split up the remainder between them. For millions of Americans, especially in smaller towns and rural counties where the local Rite Aid was genuinely the only nearby pharmacy option for miles in any direction, this isn't just a story about a struggling brand slowly losing relevance in a crowded market. It's the story of an entire national company that spent years buried under crushing debt from a merger deal that never actually worked out the way it was supposed to, finally running completely out of road and taking a real, measurable piece of everyday healthcare access down with it in the process for the communities that could least afford to lose it. Now, before we zoom out, it's worth naming a few retailers doing the exact opposite of everything you just heard, because the story here isn't universally grim, and honestly, it deserves just as much attention as the closures do. Costco isn't just surviving this environment, it's actively expanding its footprint while still packing parking lots on a random Tuesday afternoon like it's the day before a holiday. Be honest, When's the last time you walked out of Costco without buying at least one thing you didn't plan on? A rotisserie chicken you didn't need? A 40-pack of something you'll never finish? A seasonal item stacked in the middle aisle that wasn't on your list but somehow ended up in your cart anyway? The membership model gives Costco something almost none of the chains on this list have: a locked-in customer base that already paid an annual fee up front, which means people show up whether they're feeling flush or cautious because they've already committed to the relationship before they even walk through the door. That's a fundamentally different business than a store hoping you wander in on impulse, because Costco isn't earning your visit each time. It already earned it back in January when you renewed your card. And once you've paid that fee, there's a psychological pull to actually use it, to make the membership feel worth it, which keeps people coming back even in months where they're supposedly cutting spending everywhere else. Aldi is doing something similarly aggressive, opening new stores across the country right now at a pace most grocery chains would consider reckless in this climate, and it's betting big on the exact same price-sensitive shopping behavior that's actively sinking chains like Grocery Outlet elsewhere on this kind of list. Have you noticed an Aldi popping up somewhere new near you lately, maybe in a spot where a different grocery store used to sit, or in a strip mall that had been sitting empty for a year or two? The difference is that Aldi's entire cost structure, its smaller store format, its limited selection, its no-frills private label heavy shelves, was built from day one specifically for this kind of budget-conscious environment, rather than bolted on afterward as an emergency fix once the numbers started looking bad. Most grocery chains are trying to retrofit 30 years of habits and store layouts to fit a customer who suddenly cares a lot more about price than they used to. Aldi never had to make that shift, because being cheap was never a reaction for them. It was the entire founding premise of the company. When your whole operating model already assumes customers are comparison shopping every single item, checking unit prices, cross-referencing with 3 other stores before they commit to a cart, rising costs and cautious spending don't break the business. They actually validate the exact bet the company made years before anyone else saw this coming. And then there's Dollar General, which continues adding new locations even as competitors all around it are shrinking, closing, or filing for bankruptcy outright. Dollar General has leaned hard into rural and small-town markets that larger chains are actively retreating from, becoming, in a lot of these towns, the last retailer standing after the pharmacy has closed, after the department store has closed, after the regional grocery chain has pulled out entirely and left a hollowed-out building with a for-lease sign in the window. Is there a Dollar General near you that's basically become the only option left in town? The place people drive to for milk, for a birthday card, for basic toiletries, for anything at all, simply because it's the last thing standing. In some of these communities, Dollar General isn't just convenient anymore. It's functionally the only physical retail option left within a reasonable drive, which is either a genuinely smart long-term real estate strategy, buying up cheap land in overlooked markets before anyone else wanted it, or a fairly bleak commentary on what's happening to small-town America more broadly, depending entirely on how you want to look at it. Either way, the fact that a company can build an entire growth strategy around being the last store left in a town says something worth sitting with for a second. Same rising costs, same cautious consumers, same brutal economic pressure sitting on top of every single business on this list, and yet 3 completely different outcomes. Costco, Aldi, and Dollar General all read the exact same economic conditions that are currently sinking Rite Aid, Macy's, and Joann. The same rent increases, the same labor costs, the same shift in how people spend, and came out the other side stronger instead of weaker. That gap alone, the fact that identical pressure produces total collapse in one case and confident expansion in another, tells you almost everything you need to know about who actually planned ahead for a moment like this one, and who simply got caught standing still when it arrived. It's not that some of these companies got lucky and others didn't. It's that some of them built their entire model assuming a customer who watches every dollar, while others were still operating like it was still 1995, and assuming people would keep showing up out of habit alone. So here's my real question for you. Out of everything on this list, which closure genuinely hits closest to home? The one where you'd actually feel the difference on a Tuesday afternoon if it vanished from your town, the one that would actually change your routine rather than just make you a little nostalgic for 5 minutes? Is it the pharmacy you've gone to for years? The grocery store where you know exactly which aisle everything's in? Or something smaller and more sentimental that you didn't expect to care about until you saw it on this list? And on the flip side, does it surprise you that Costco, Aldi, and Dollar General are thriving in the exact same environment that's wiping out chains twice their size? Or does it honestly track with what you've already noticed happening in your own town over the last couple of years? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious whether your local experience actually matches what the national numbers are saying, or whether your town is telling a completely different story than the headlines. Before you go, if you want to actually get ahead of how the food industry quietly drains your wallet every time you shop, whether it's at one of the survivors on this list or one of the chains that's still hanging on for now, go grab a copy of my guide, The Consumer Trap. It breaks down exactly where those pricing tricks are hiding, the shrinking portions, the pricing psychology, the packaging designed to fool your eyes, and how to actually stop falling for them without changing your whole life to do it. And if this kind of breakdown is useful to you, subscribing genuinely helps this channel keep tracking every one of these closures as they unfold. So hit that button now if you haven't already. It takes about 2 seconds, and it means we get to keep doing this kind of digging for you every single week, finding the next list before it becomes the next headline.